Hey, what's up? Robert Casey here. Today I'm going to show you my personal vocal chain when it comes to mixing podcasts. A lot of people ask me all the time, how do you get that big radio sound, that big podcast sound that you don't really hear too much nowadays? I'm going to show you my personal technique on how I achieve that sound. That's the era that I come from, the background I come from. Starting out as a teenager in radio, I learned how to mix and I learned just the importance of that broadcast sound, and I bring that to the podcast that I do. So today I'm going to show you how I achieve that sound. Let's get into it. All right, so here we go. Let's dive in. This particular podcast that I chose for this particular example is the Woman Evolved podcast. It is hosted by Sarah Jakes Roberts. This is one of several podcasts that I do. So this video is strictly to show you guys my vocal chain that I do for podcasts. Now, just to give a brief rundown of her setup, we go into a Rodecaster Pro, and she is using a SM7B as a microphone. So we'll start here with the first in the chain. This is the SSL channel strip here, and again, just as a disclaimer, I do use Waves plugins for my vocal chain and for all of my mixing. So as you can see, this waveform, if I make it the actual size it is, it's very small. For some reason, the Rodecaster picks up this way even when it's cranked all the way, but I boost this by 15 decibels just to give it some more volume. The reason I use the SSL is, for one, I love the SSL. I love the sound of it, and I try to treat this as if it's an actual studio or an actual recording facility that I'm in. So I try to do the exact signal flow. So I start with the SSL really just to boost the audio and to give it that SSL, a little bit analog tone and warmth. So I'll play some of the audio here just so you can hear what it sounds like so far. So pretty much it's dry. This is with no EQ, just running through the SSL.
Of the 75 hard challenge, and child, they definitely gave it the right name because it is a challenge. I can tell you though, for real.
All right, so that's pretty much what it sounds like. Next in the vocal chain is the Aphex PreAmp here. So if you're not familiar with what a preamp is, it's basically something that a microphone is plugged into that gives the microphone a bit of some tone, maybe on the top end, a little sharper, a little bit of warmth, a little body. I like this particular preamp because it does exactly that. It gives me a little shine on the top end and a little roundness to the vocals. So I will turn this on and off as I'm playing the vocals so you can hear the difference. It is subtle, but listen in close. Right now it's off, and I will turn it on as I'm playing. So let's listen in.
Challenge. I can tell you though, for real, I am enjoying doing something that is for myself, that is making me better. This morning I looked in the mirror and I said, wow, you are really allowing your actions to line up with the type of woman you say you want to be. And that's been a beautiful journey for me. If you're still waiting for your 2022.
So as I turn it on just now, you can hear a little bit of the top end and a little bit of the body. Let's listen one more time.
Shout out to the folks that decided to ease their way into the new year, though. I understand that. Take your time,
Turning it
but
off.
make sure you don't get left behind. Okay, listen. So I'm excited about
Turning it
today's
on.
co-host. If no woman left behind was a person, it would be my girl, Maya Douglas.
Again, it is a very subtle difference, but it's very much noticeable when you listen in the long run. And so moving along here, let's go to the EQ. So this particular EQ, I just use Logic's EQ. Let's go from highs to lows. I start here right around 3,500 hertz. I boost, you can see how wide my Q is here. I boost about half a decibel. That adds just a little bit of clarity to the voice. And then if I move down this way, right around 200 hertz on average, I like to call this the proximity range here, which if boosted, I would have it for her voice right around 208, just to get more specific with her tone. It's proximity, so it'll make it sound as if she's a little closer to the microphone, just to add that presence. And I boost right around 115, between 120 and 112 usually, to add that big bottom radio sound. Then again, this is just my preference. I come from a radio background, and I think, well, for me, I love to keep that sound throughout the industry. With a lot of people doing podcasts now, a lot of people are getting cheap microphones and cheap interfaces, and they're not really doing too much mixing, so it sounds really dry and kind of boring. But I try to keep the radio broadcast sound with the podcast that I do. So I will turn on the EQ, well, I'll leave it off for now, and I will play her vocal without the EQ, and then I will turn it on so you can hear what it sounds like with it and without it. So starting off, this is without the EQ.
If you ask me. Shout out to the folks that decided to ease their way into the new year, though. I understand that. Take your time, but make sure you don't get left behind. Okay, listen. So I'm excited about today's co-host, If No Woman Left Behind.
So if you notice when I turn it on, she sounds a little closer to the microphone, and it sounds a little more round and fuller on the bottom end. And so, yeah, we can move right along. So the next thing in my vocal chain here is a gate. I have it here right after these, and all these are in a specific order for specific reasons. So the gate I have next. As you can see, as we get further into the show, this portion that I'm playing here is just the introduction before she gets into interviewing her guest. And so as she's interviewing her guest, a lot of times, you might hear stuff in the background. You might hear white noise, maybe from a fan or from stuff going on in the background. You don't want to hear all that in moments of silence while the guest is speaking, and then there's silence, in between here. There's some silence here. There's silence here while the guest is speaking. There's more silence here. These areas, you want everything to be silent. And so I have this gate, which closes that off in those moments. And so we can move along as I'm trying to keep this quick. So we'll leave this off for now. So, speaking of the silence, the preamps on the Rodecaster Pro, in my opinion, are a little bit noisy. And so I've worked with 3 or 4 of them, and they all tend to have this sound a little bit under the vocal. And so to remove that, this plugin, NS1 by Waves, is a great plugin to help remove that. If you're in an area where, like for me, my studio, it's sort of new. I don't have any acoustic treatment yet, so I'm sure you can hear some, as I back up from the microphone, you can kind of hear some acoustics in here. If you want to cut back on acoustics, if you want to cut back on some of that hissing and background stuff, this plugin is phenomenal for that. So I use this to cut down on the white noise on her voice, and I'll show you what this is really doing as I get down to the last plugin here. So we will leave this off for now as well. Next in the chain is one of my favorite compressors, the legendary LA-2A, or in this case, the CLA-2A, which is legend of an engineer, Chris Lord-Alge's version of the classic LA-2A. The thing I love about this compressor is it compresses, but it doesn't. This type of compressor is considered a leveling amplifier, which it's exactly that. And so basically what it does is it makes, which is the basic definition of a compressor, it makes the quiet sounds louder and the louder sounds quieter. And so I'll show you a moment here as we can see, this peak right in this area, this right here. And so if I play it with it off, you will hear her get loud when she says the word right here. And so let's take a listen.
Challenge and chow. They definitely gave it the right name because
Let's play it one more time.
of the 75 hard challenge and chow.
And so what this is going to do is take that moment, that chow thing that she said right there, it's going to level it off so that it doesn't peak out as it does before. And so with this compressor, I tried to keep it no more than about 10 to negative 12, negative 10 and negative 12 dB of compression with this. And so this is, I'm going to play it again with it off, and then I'll play it again with it on so you can hear how it's balancing out those loud moments and then those quieter moments so it sounds smooth all the way around. So let's take a listen.
I am on day 17 of the 75 hard challenge and chow.
And let's listen with it on.
I am on day 17 of the 75 hard challenge and chow.
So if you notice again, that chow moment right here is a lot quieter and it's smooth all the way around. The volume is balanced, because what I run into a lot of times is for your average listeners, they may have to crank up their radios or crank up, whatever they're listening to, podcasts or whatever content they're listening to that has a lot of dialogue, and they're having to turn their radio up during softer moments. And then if somebody decides to get really loud, then they're having to reach and grab the remote or turn something down real quick. And then it comes back to a quiet moment and they're like, oh shoot, I got to turn it back. That's kind of nerve wracking. So you want things to be as balanced as possible without overdoing it, of course. And so that's the purpose of this CLA-2A. It's a wonderful compressor for that. Moving right along to the last thing. This is what I end the chain with, which is the CLA Chris Lord Algae vocal plugin. So this is just his overall vocal chain. And so I use a couple of the things here. So I switch from sub to lower register because sub frequencies aren't really needed when it comes to dialogue, depending on what you're going for. In this case, a podcast or broadcast, it's not necessary. So I leave this right at 0. There's a very, very slight boost when you have it on and it's sitting at 0. Almost unnoticeable. But for the top end, I leave it on the byte option, which boosts right around between 6 and 8K. So right around here in this range on the top end, just to add a little clarity to the top end. It's not shine. It's not real high up 10, 12K crispy shine at the top. It's more so top presence boost. And so the spank option, which is the compression option in here, this is a lot harder of a compressor that has a higher ratio, like a 4-to-1, maybe even 5. I believe once I saw the notes of this plugin, I think it's 4-to-1. And so I boost this about 7 decibels. And so that gives the vocal energy. It gives it movement. And so it gives it more of that radio sound that you're used to. You're used to hearing when you turn on your radio. And so that's what I like in a vocal. In this particular podcast, there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of movement. And so I like to keep that in the mix as well, and to help that energy out with compression and EQ, of course. And so this particular compressor, when you rise this up, the more volume you give the compressor, I keep saying compressor, the compression, it does boost the volume. So you're going to hear a volume spike with this, but let's take a listen with and without. I'm going to start without, and then we'll turn it on so you can hear what this is sounding like.
I am on day 17 of the 75 hard challenge and chow. They definitely gave it the right name because it is a chow.
And let's listen with it on.
I am on day 17 of the 75 hard challenge and chow. They definitely gave it the right name because it is a chow.
And so now if you listen to her vocal It gives you that classic radio FM radio sound. And so that's what I like in a radio. Now, of course, in some situations, depending on the podcast, it's not so much necessary. If it's talk radio, maybe not. You want to keep that talk radio chill vibe going. But this particular podcast, full of energy, you want to keep that energy. And so if we listen to this vocal, let's start with everything off. And I'll leave the SSL on for the sake of the volume boost and the gain staging. But let's listen with it off.
In this thing, how you feeling? Okay, I am on day 17 of the 75 hard challenge, and child, they definitely gave it the right name because it.
All right, and let's listen with everything on except these two here. Listen to the difference.
In this thing, how you feeling? Okay, I am on day 17 of the 75 hard challenge, and child, they definitely gave it the right name because it is a challenge. I can tell you though, for real, I am enjoying doing something.
Now let's talk about these two. The gate, again, this comes in handy. Let's go further into the conversation during like some silent moments here. Where the guest is speaking, as you can see, the guest is speaking here. There's silence here. So let's listen in at a moment where there's silence and the gate is off, and you will hear a lot of what's going on in the background of her vocal. So let's listen.
Your own life and your own journey, and why you feel so passionate about what you're doing now.
Now, I'm sure you can hear the white noise. You may need to turn your volume up to really hear what's going on. So let's play it one more time really briefly. Turn your volume up so you can hear all the white noise and stuff going on in the background. It's very subtle, but let's listen in.
And why you feel so passionate about what you're doing now.
Okay, so now you understand why this noise gate is necessary. And so I have this set to where it immediately, as soon as she speaks, the attack is quick. It's going to open up the gate as soon as she speaks. I have the release relatively mild so that it doesn't immediately close up and shut off the volume and shut off the noise, because you want it to sound as natural as possible too, and you want it to be a little bit pleasing to your listeners' ears, and it doesn't alert them like, oh shoot, I can hear the volume cutting off or her vocal cut off. You know, and so I have the threshold right around -46, which is a good place to catch. You know, there's silent moments where you might hear her say, or yeah, and it'll be really soft. You don't want the gate to cut those soft moments out. So you want to find a good area for the gate. But let's go ahead and play this. And so you can hear the gate close and shut off the noise as soon as she's done speaking. So let's listen.
Your own life and your own journey, and why you feel so passionate about what you're doing now.
There it is. And let's listen one more time and pay attention to when it's open and when it's closed, and you'll hear that fade shut. So let's listen again.
Your own life and your own journey, and why you feel so passionate about what you're doing now.
There it is. And so that brings us right back here to the NS1. And so the NS1, if you heard the shh and heard it cut off here at the end, the NS1 helps to cut out that shh noise. So when she is speaking, you don't hear the shh behind her voice as you normally would. So let's listen with the NS1 off.
To identifying specifically, like I want it to be for young people, like is there a connection between your own life and your own journey, and why you feel so passionate?
Now, if you listen close, you can hear some hiss behind her voice, and you can really hear it in these moments. So if I leave the gate off and you can hear the hiss right now. If I turn this on, it'll subtly remove that. So let's listen. So you're hearing how it's shutting off the hissing. And so let's add it all up, put it all together, and let's listen to this quick segment with all of our vocal chain on.
So how did you go from, I feel like I should maybe be starting a ministry, something that's geared towards helping people, to identifying specifically, like, I want it to be for young people? Like, is there a connection between your own life and your own journey and why you feel so passionate about what you're doing now?
And there it is. All right. So that is my podcast vocal chain. And again, this is just me. These are my preferences, what I go for, what I like to hear. And again, I've been in radio since, I started in radio when I was 16. And so being around the analog gear and listening to that big radio sound, that's something I don't hear a lot anymore. I don't really hear well mixed podcasts like that anymore. I feel like a lot of stuff is raw. A lot of people are getting USB mics and, cheap mics going into a cheap interface and not really mixing anything. And, it's good to hear well mixed broadcasts and podcasts these days. And so if you want to check out this particular podcast, again, it is called the Woman Evolve Podcast. You can find it anywhere, YouTube. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, if you just want to check it out. And if you just want to check it out to hear how it's mixed. And again, this is just a vocal chain video. I do plan on doing more where I talk about, adding music under it and blending the music with the vocals. And, as an example right here.
If you're still waiting for your 2022 motivation to kick in,
you want to make sure the music isn't clashing with the vocals. I'm going to do tutorials on that too, and how to master a podcast, because I do have a mastering chain as well, just to make sure everything is balanced and sounding good overall. And so that's it for this video. I try to keep it short, but it is very important to have certain details in. And so if you like this, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. I will be back with more, but for now, enjoy your day and I'll see you soon.